Bienvenidas, bienvenidos a un nuevo ciclo de texto y contexto. Luego de la exitosa experiencia que compartimos en el año 2020, hemos decidido desde la Fundación BAMA de Educación y Cultura, con el acompañamiento de la Escuela Internacional para el Estudio del Holocausto de Yad Vashem y la Claims Conference, crear y desarrollar un nuevo ciclo de encuentros que apuntan a capacitar y brindar herramientas a los docentes que creen en nuestros espacios de formación. Esta propuesta está impulsada por los programas que desde Fundación BAMA hace más de 10 años forman a jóvenes y adultos educadores en temas de Shoah, Mansurim y Morey Morim. Para este encuentro abordaremos la temática Vida y desaparición de una comunidad judía, el caso de Berislav, y está a cargo de Michał Hoyak, director del Centro de Investigación sobre el Holocausto Yahad in Unum. Todo el ciclo tendrá traducción simultánea, ya que el disertante estará hablando en inglés, por lo cual es muy importante que puedan mantenerse en el canal en español. Si tienen alguna dificultad técnica, pueden escribirnos en el chat o pueden enviarle un mensaje privado al personal del staff que se encuentra aquí presente. Pueden ver ahora en la diapositiva la explicación de cómo configurar la traducción simultánea. Como el orador disertará en inglés, con traducción simultánea en español, para escuchar la sesión en idioma español, al ingresar a la plataforma deben realizar los siguientes pasos. Desde su computadora, en los controles de opciones de la reunión, en la barra inferior, hacer clic en interpretación. Hacer clic en el idioma que desean escuchar. Para escuchar solo el idioma interpretado, hacer clic en silenciar audio original. Si se están conectando desde el celular, en los controles de opciones de la reunión, en la barra inferior, hacer clic en más. Y luego en la opción de interpretación. Hacer clic en el idioma que desean escuchar y luego presionar en finalizar. Para escuchar solo el idioma interpretado, hacer clic en silenciar audio original. Ahora sí, le paso la palabra a mi colega Leti Barán. Como pueden ver en la imagen, si tienen alguna duda, ahí está la representación gráfica de las indicaciones para la traducción simultánea. Les repito, cualquier dificultad nos pueden escribir para que les ayudemos con los problemas técnicos. Ahora sí, mi colega Leti Barán les dará la bienvenida.
Hola, buenas tardes, Brujima Baim, bienvenidos a todos. Es un gusto poder estar hoy aquí compartiendo con ustedes este ciclo de texto y contexto. Este año ocupando el lugar de coordinadora de Morey Morim por este lapso de tiempo, mientras Verónica Kovacic se encuentra en su licencia por maternidad y quien les manda saludos a muchos y a todos de los que están hoy aquí. Les recordamos que estas sesiones, tanto el ciclo de hoy como el próximo, estarán disponibles en nuestro canal de YouTube de la Fundación BAMA, no en forma automática, es decir, no es que hoy de noche ya lo van a poder ver, pero en los próximos días sí. Tal como dice el título, el texto y el contexto para la enseñanza de la Shoah, hago un pequeño comentario relacionado con el concepto de texto, que tiene que ver más con el interior y con algo propio e interno, y contexto, que tiene que ver con algo externo, abierto. Por lo tanto, la idea es poder conjugar esas dos visiones a la hora de lo que podamos transmitir hoy. Queremos agradecer especialmente la presencia de todos los colegas y todos los educadores de diferentes puntos del país, de diferentes países de Sudamérica, que están obviamente desde Argentina, pero también sabemos que nos están escuchando y están participando desde Paraguay, desde Uruguay, desde Brasil, desde Chile, desde Bolivia, desde Perú, desde Colombia, desde la República Dominicana, México, Venezuela, República Checa, Israel. Es un gusto tenerlos hoy aquí y estamos seguros que va a ser muy significativo y enriquecedor lo que Michał tiene hoy para compartirnos. Le doy entonces la palabra a otra de nuestras colegas y parte del equipo, Eliana Rab Vadihi, en nombre de la Escuela Internacional de Yad Vashem.
Bien, buenas tardes a todos, buenas noches, acá desde Jerusalén, desde Israel. Un placer verlos. Un segundo. Bien, estoy muy emocionada de verlos y que estén acá con nosotros en esta actividad. Quiero en primer lugar agradecer a mamá, por supuesto a Jimena, Jacobovis, la directora de mamá, a todo el equipo de mamá, a Leticia, que está acá coordinando el proyecto de Morín Morín, a Vero, por supuesto, que la extrañamos y que le deseamos lo mejor, a Vale Levin, coordinadora del proyecto de Masbirim, Denise también parte del equipo y toda la gente que está detrás de todo este proyecto. Agradecer también a la agencia judía, a Gabriela Glassman, la representante de Conosul para la agencia judía. Quiero agradecer también desde Yad Vashem a Noma Keito, nuestra directora, a Perla Hassan, del Departamento de Relaciones Exteriores, y por supuesto agradecer a la Alson y la Clems Conference que ayudan a que estos proyectos se estén realizando, y a Mijaul Joyak, que ahora ya lo vamos a ir a presentar, agradecerle que realmente apenas acudimos a él, realmente dijo que sí, que le encantaría estar participando, así que muchísimas gracias. Quiero también, en nombre mío, por supuesto, dirigir el Chilepsi, que es parte del equipo, decirles que estamos muy contentos que estén aquí en esta actividad, y ahora sí quiero pasar a presentar la conferencia. Desde el año 2004, la Fundación Yahad Inunum ha realizado investigaciones relacionadas con el Holocausto en Europa del Este. A lo largo de los últimos 17 años han desarrollado una metodología única de investigación basada en el estudio de documentos de archivo y entrevistas a testigos de los diferentes crímenes perpetrados. En el año 2017, el equipo de investigación viajó hasta Berislav para documentar el destino de los documentos de la comunidad judía local que fueron destruidos durante el Holocausto. Este encuentro será una oportunidad para conocer acerca de los resultados de dicha investigación y de la modalidad de trabajo de Yahad Inunum. La conferencia de hoy, como ya presentamos antes, Vida y desaparición de una comunidad judía, el caso de Berislav. Michał Joyak, originario de Polonia, ha trabajado para Yahad Inunum desde el 2010, cuando la organización comenzó su investigación en Polonia. En los últimos 11 años, Michał ha participado en 50 viajes de investigación en Europa Central y Oriental, durante los cuales entrevistó a más de 1000 testigos presenciales del Holocausto por varas. Como director del Centro de Investigación Yahad Inunum desde el 2020, se ha especializado en el Holocausto en Polonia y en los estados bálticos. Su investigación más actual se centra en la participación de los Baudians en el Holocausto en el gobierno general. Michał también participa en los proyectos de investigación de Yahad Inunum en Guatemala e Irak. Coordina los programas universitarios desarrollados por el YEU en Europa, la Universidad de Albi, Universidad Católica de Angers, Universidad de la Sorbona, Universidad Jagiellonian de Cracovia, y facilita cursos y seminarios para estudiantes y profesionales del Holocausto. Michał, muchísimas gracias. Te voy a pasar ahora sí la palabra. Vamos a hacer, después de que sea la presentación de Michał, vamos a dar un espacio para las preguntas. Se va a abrir el chat y van a poder hacer las preguntas para que se las podamos transmitir en traducción simultánea a Michał. Michał, por favor.
So, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. I'm very pleased to be here. It's the first time I will have the opportunity to give a presentation for educators, teachers, and public from Argentina and neighboring countries. So before starting my presentation, I just wanted to thank all of you, all the participants, to be connected, to listen to this presentation. And of course, I wanted to thank my partners from Yad Vashem, Eliana and Yehel. And also I wanted to thank our colleagues from the Jewish Agency for South Africa, Gabriela Glassman, and of course also our friends from Mbama, Jimena, Leticia, Veronica, Valeria. Thank you very much for the invitation. So as Eliana said, I'm working for an organization which is called Yahad in Unum. It means together in one in Hebrew and in Latin. So our organization is dedicated to document the evidence of the Holocaust in Eastern Europe. After an in-depth archival research within Soviet documents, within German archives, within Polish archives, and many others, our researchers moved to the field in Eastern Europe, traveling from village to village to interview the eyewitnesses of mass shooting of Jews conducted by Nazis and their collaborators between 41 and 44. We also try to identify the killing sites of the victims by interviewing the non-Jewish neighbors who were present during the crime. We also document the fate of other categories of victims: non-Jewish civilians, Roma civilians, handicapped people, prisoners of war that were also killed in mass executions by different German units. Up to date, we interviewed more than 7,000 witnesses, and we identified more than 3,000 killing sites of the Holocaust in Eastern Europe, the so-called Holocaust by bullets. So you have to, just to give you a few very general information about what was the Holocaust in Eastern Europe, you have to know that more than 1/3 of the Jewish victims of the Holocaust, it means that more than 2 million of people were murdered in mass shootings that largely took place across Central and Eastern Europe in thousands of towns and villages, in forests, in fields, or in swamps. In many instances, German units eliminated entire communities in a matter of days or even hours in broad daylight in front of the non-Jewish population. This criminal method of murder by firing squad was employed across Eastern Europe, regardless the numbers of victims. It could be a single Jewish family in a Belarusian village, or tens of thousands of people in large Ukrainian city. And yet many of these killing sites remain less known, both in the local context and in the larger remembrance of the Holocaust. So during this general introduction, in the first part, we will try very quickly to understand what was the Holocaust by bullets through its geography, its time frame, and its main actors with a macro historical approach. I will not insist too much about this introduction about the Holocaust in Eastern Europe, because I know that you will have certainly a presentation of Orit Margaliot from Yad Vashem, and I had the pleasure to listen her presentation about the Holocaust in former Soviet Union, and I know that she will spend a lot of time with you to talk about the main historical event that happened in Soviet Union during the Holocaust. I will spend more time to speak about microhistory. We will try to understand together how the Holocaust was implemented in a concrete space with concrete actors through the case of Berislav, a small town located nowadays in southern Ukraine, which belonged to Soviet Union before the beginning of the war between Nazi Germany and Soviet Union. So before the fall of the communism, few historians were interested in the so-called killing sites of the Holocaust, the places of mass execution in the occupied territories of Soviet Union, Baltic states, Poland, but also in Balkans. Of course, historians were aware of the mass shootings in these areas, but they paid comparatively little attention to the places themselves. For a long time, scholars' research focused mainly on the main ghettos and extermination camps. Since few decades, however, the mass killings of the Jews conducted by various German units in Central and Eastern Europe have been better known, also thanks to the access to the Soviet archives that opened after the fall of the communism in the 90s. I wanted to start this presentation with few important reminders. I just wanted to say that the part of Europe that we will talk about during this presentation was the place in the world where most of the Jewish population used to live prior to the Second World War. Before the war, there were around 3 million of Jews that were living on the territory of Soviet Union. Once the war between Nazi Germany and Soviet Union started in June 1941, the Jews who were living in the territories of Baltic states, of Eastern Poland, some part of Romania, the territories that were annexed in 1939 by Soviet Union, the population in Soviet Union grew up to 5 million of Jews. So it was the biggest concentration of Jewish population on the whole planet. So when on June 22nd, 1941, Hitler began to invade the Soviet Union with the Operation Barbarossa, the different army groups, North, Center, and South, launched a broad offensive, and they were followed closely behind by 4 Einsatzgruppen, which were tasked with the elimination of all potential opposition, primarily the Jews, but also the Roma, communists, Soviet activists, disabled people, or partisans. So the war that was brought to the East by the Reich was an ideological conflict, a conquest of territory, and a total war to exterminate Judeo-Bolshevism. So the map that you see is the map of the movement of the Einsatzgruppen in Eastern Europe, and the respective number of victims that each unit killed between 1941 and 1942. So as you can see, there were 4 Einsatzgruppen. The Einsatzgruppe A that operated in the north of occupied Soviet Union in Baltic states, and they went up to close to Leningrad. The Einsatzgruppe B operated mostly in Belarus and in Western Russia, in Smolensk area. The Einsatzgruppe C that you see here operated across Western Ukraine toward Kharkiv and Rostov-on-Don. And its personnel was responsible for the death of 118,000 victims. And there was the Einsatzgruppe D in the south of, who operated in the south of Ukraine, and in southern Russia also. So as far as the mass shootings of the Jews in occupied Soviet territories are concerned, the Einsatzgruppen are generally mentioned. Altogether, the Einsatzgruppen consisted of more or less 3,000 men. So we already say that more than 2 million of Jews were killed during the Holocaust by bullets. Here is the main question of our research, how a limited number of men was able to kill more than 2 million of people from 41 to 44. One of the first answers to this question is the fact that even the Einsatzgruppen were involved in many killings, they were not the only ones. According to the historian Raoul Hilberg, that you all know, around 900,000 victims were killed by the Einsatzgruppen. But other German units were also involved in the genocide. The police battalions, the Waffen-SS, the Wehrmacht, the local police, local auxiliaries, and also sometimes the local population. So if we speak in terms of chronology, the shooting of Jews in Eastern territories started before the first killings in gas chambers, in the camps, in the extermination camps of Chełmno, and they were perpetrated despite the existence of the gas chambers. In spring 44, you still have shootings. For instance, there are hundreds of Jews that are executed in Kaunas in Lithuania. So especially after their defeats at Stalingrad and Kursk, the Nazis resolved to make all evidence of their crime disappear. The objective of the Operation 1005 was to open the graves and to burn corpses found within them, to eliminate all traces of the Jewish population in Europe through a last wave of genocide. The operation was led by Paul Blobel, which was one of the chief of the Einsatzgruppe, a former architect who was also one of the chief of the Babi Yar massacre. So the Operation 1005 was largely unsuccessful as the retreating German troops failed to burn all the corpses. I wanted to show you, to conclude this short historical introduction, I just wanted to show you two last slides before we go to the study case, because I would like to keep in mind this few particularities of the Holocaust in Eastern territories. As we already said, more than a third of the victims of the Holocaust were killed in mass executions. Only in Ukraine, there was 1.5 million of Jews who are executed. It's more than in the camp of Auschwitz, in the extermination camp of Auschwitz-Birkenau. It was not an industrial process, but it was a man killing another man. It was a personal crime. There is also the fact that the executions started already in June 41 and were perpetrated until 44 in Soviet Union, despite the execution of the extermination camps. And that this execution were perpetrated on a huge territory going from Latvia to the Caucasus. One of the particularities also was the fact that in the East, it was not the victims who were brought to the killers, to the extermination camps, but it was the opposite. It was German units who were going village by village to exterminate all the Jewish communities that were living on the territories, on the occupied territories of Soviet Union. It was a mobile crime, and to ensure this mobility, the German units needed to count on the local administration, on the local police, but also on the local population to be able to organize the mass executions. For instance, they were using local population to dig the pit before the execution, or to bury the corpses after the executions, or to cook for the German units during the killing. And one also important information about this this part of the genocide in Eastern Europe is the fact that the genocide was not hidden at all. The genocide was perpetrated in front of the non-Jewish local population in broad daylight, and sometimes even local population was involved in some ways in the crime. And this public also side of the crime we can is also relevant when we talk about the photography of the Holocaust, because we have many, there are dozens, even maybe even hundreds of pictures of the mass executions perpetrated by Nazis and their collaborators in Eastern Europe. And if we talk, for instance, about the extermination of Jews in extermination camps, we don't have that much pictures of Treblinka, of Sobibor, of Auschwitz, and especially we don't have pictures of the last moment of the genocide, right? When the victims are finally killed. So that's it for this very brief introduction about the Holocaust in Eastern Europe. Now we come to the second part of the presentation. In the next 20-30 minutes, we will try to understand how the Holocaust was implemented by the Nazis in a town where a Jewish community used to live prior to the Second World War and the Holocaust. So this town is called Berislav, and with the team of Yahad Inunum, we visited it in May 2017 to conduct an investigation about the fate of the Jews from Berislav during the Holocaust. So the town of Berislav is a small town today of 12,000 inhabitants. It's located about 1 hour driving of Kherson, north of the city, on the Dnieper River. It's a very Soviet-style town, and the location of the town on the river will also have its importance during the Holocaust. We will see it later. Today, there is no Jewish community living in Berislav. Just few historical information about the town. The town was founded in the 15th century, and the first record of a local Jewish community dates back to the early 19th century. At the end of the 19th century, there were more than 2,000 Jews living in the town. And as a result of the economical situation in the region, migration to big cities, but also because of the pogroms of the end of the 19th centuries of the Russian Civil War, the Jewish population drastically decreased in the town. According to the census of 1939, only 230 Jews lived in Berislav before World War II, making up 3% of the local population. The main activities of Jews in Berislav at that period were trade of cereals, of agricultural products, of clothing and footwear manufacturing, and also repairing. When the Operation Barbarossa started, the town of Berislav was occupied by German forces on August 29th in 41. And by that time, Jewish refugees, Jewish evacuees arrived to the town from western parts of Ukraine, hoping to move further to the east shortly. So here you see the location of Berislav. As I told you, it's located on the big river, the Dnieper River. And as prior to each investigation, before visiting the region of Kherson and Berislav in May 2017, our researchers provided us with archives from two main funds. The German Federal Justice Archives, which contain files against the perpetrators. And the second collection we are working with is the Soviet Extraordinary States Commission Archives, which was created after the liberation by Soviet authorities to evaluate the human and material damages caused by the Nazi occupation of Soviet Union to prepare documentation to judge perpetrators and collaborators. So after having translated and studied thousands of pages of archives, we could identify the research area and locate places in Kherson region where we could conduct a field investigation. As you can see on the map, there is more than 60 killing sites of Jews and Roma victims in the Kherson region, which is only one of the 25th regions of Ukraine. So these are the killing sites that are located on the west bank of the Dnieper River. Berislav is just here with the number of 400. We will see what it means in a moment. And these are the killing sites that are located on the eastern bank, sorry, of the Dnieper River. In yellow color, in green color, you have the killing sites of the Jewish victims, and in red color, you have the killing sites of the Roma victims. So after this in-depth work in the archives, we sent a team to Kherson, a team of 11 people with investigators, photographers, cameramen, translators, to interview the eyewitnesses of these crimes to locate the mass graves of the victims. So this is an excerpt of the Soviet Extraordinary Commission. This is a testimony of a man who was requisitioned to dig the pit and to bury the corpses during the main execution of the Jews of Berislav, and he is talking about an execution of 400 Jews in the town. I just attract your attention about few names that are here in the archives. These are names of people who were collaborators of Germans. They were in the local Ukrainian police. There is the name of Danilenko. There is also the name of Kondrovsky, and we will come back to these names very soon. So basically, what I also wanted to attract your attention about what did we know before going to Berislav, before conducting the field investigation in the interviews. In the Soviet archives, we also had this map. So these are the map this is a sketch done by the Soviet commissions about the mass executions that were perpetrated in Berislav during the Nazi occupation. So this is a very important and interesting document for us because we know where to start our investigation. Thanks to this kind of map, we exactly knew where were the killing sites of the victims. So we sent investigators in the surrounding of these places already at the beginning of the investigation. So according to this map, there was one execution site of Jews that was located here near the slaughterhouse, in between the slaughterhouse and the local stadium, near Hirova Street. We also knew that there was a killing site of Soviet prisoners of war and of Romas, not far away also from the slaughterhouse. So basically, combining all the archives that we have prior to the investigation, we knew that Berislav was in the area of operation of the Einsatzgruppe D. We knew that in September 41, there was the main killing of the Jewish population, where about 400 Jews were shot. We knew also about another killing of 17 Jews in October 41. We also knew that between 41 and 43, there were more than 1,200 prisoners of war that were executed, in Berislav. And we also knew that there was a killing of 16 Romas by the Einsatzgruppe D in Berislav. So basically, this is the information that we have before conducting the investigation. So once we arrive to Berislav, we started to look for witnesses, for people who were born before the war, who are living in Berislav, and who remember what's happened for the Jews during the German occupation. So the person that you see are non-Jews, they are Ukrainian neighbors. So once we arrived to Berislav, we interviewed 5 of them during our investigation. We interviewed another person that is not here because she only moved to Berislav after the war, but she gave a testimony about the Holocaust in another town of the region. So the first person that we interviewed was Alexandra, that was born in 32. I just attract your attention. The numbers that you see in the brackets are the birth dates, the birth year of the witnesses that we interview. So most of them were teenagers, young adults, or children during in 42, in 41 and 42, where most of the execution happened in the region. So there were some of them, they had the same age of the students you have nowadays in your classroom. So the first person that we interviewed was Alexandra. She was 9 years old in 41 when the Jewish population of Berislav was executed. So she had some memories of the pre-war period. She remembers that Berislav was inhabited by mostly by Ukrainians, but there were also some Jewish families. She remembers some Jewish stores, and she went to the school with some Jewish children. She remembered the name of Vanya, Galia, Yura. She also remembered places of the Jewish life prior to the war. She remembered that there was a Jewish cemetery on the outskirts of the cities. She started to talk about her memories of the wartime. She remembers that in June 41, when the German arrives, that Jews of Berislav, many of them began to leave the city, and some were trying to cross the river to escape. But the problem was that like the Soviet troops that were retreating were giving priorities to the people that were considered as necessary for the war effort of Soviet Unions. It means soldiers, but also people who are working in industry, in fabrics, and random citizens. They were not allowed to cross the bridge to go further to the east. So she remembers the bombing at the beginning of the Nazi invasion. She remembers, for instance, that there were many Jewish shops that were bombed, and that these Jewish shops were looted by the local population. She heard about the executions that were perpetrated near the slaughterhouse. She heard the shootings, for instance, but she was not an eyewitness of the killing. But she said that the killing were near the slaughterhouse. The second person that we interviewed in Berislav was Fedir. He was an old man, born in 24, so it means that he was 17 in 41, so he was a young adult. So his testimony is a bit different of the testimony of Alexandra, who was a child at the time. But Fedir remembers also some of the Jewish families of Berislav prior to the war. He remembers especially the barber of Berislav, who was Jewish, and he mentioned several times his name during the interview. He called him Siomka. So in 41, when there was the mass execution of Jews in Berislav, he saw a huge column of Jews passing in front of his house. It was in the summer of 41. He saw that Jews in the column were carrying bundles. They were told to take their valuables with them because they would be moved somewhere. This is what he said. And in the column, there were men, women, and children, and all of them were walking on foot. And the column was escorted by the local police and the German. So he said that the column was taken not far from his house, on the other side of the local cemetery, and that there was a ravine that was located them, and he went to see what was going on as a curious teenager, a curious young adult. He was hidden in the bushes to watch the execution, and he said that the victims were brought by groups of 10 people, and that they were shot inside the ravine, and that at the end of the shooting, the Germans searched the clothes of the Jews for valuables, and then they left, leaving the clothes behind that afterwards were taken by local population. He also mentioned that just nearby the killing site of the Jews, there was the killing of the Soviet prisoners of war who were executed after being kept in the buildings of the synagogue. So there was a camp established in the building of the synagogue. It's also very common that the Germans, when they arrive, they make a use of the buildings that are related to the Jewish tradition, to the Jewish culture, to the Jewish religion. Here, in Berislav, they establish camps for prisoners of war in the building of the synagogue. And after the interview, so the images that you see here, Fedir brought us to the site of the former Jewish cemetery that you can see on the left side. So there is no, the Jewish cemetery no longer exists. There is no traces of tombstones. And there is no monument also on the killing sites of Soviet soldiers. And on the right side, we are on the killing site of the Jews of Berislav. It's a meadow, which is located near the former slaughterhouse, the one that we saw on the sketch of the Soviet Commission. And there is also no memorial about the killing. So this is the only matzevot that we saw at the place of the Jewish cemetery of Berislav, which is located just nearby the Orthodox cemetery that you can see in the background. So the third person that we met was another man. His name was Alexander. He was born in Turkey. He also used to go to school with Jewish classmates. He remembered Sunia and Loska Levinstein. He remembers their father, who was an owner of the company. He has another Jewish boy in his class, Alek Polner, whose father was a musician. And this, what is interesting is that the witness also remember the hairdresser, Simka, and his wife, Fira. And according to this witness, both the hairdresser and his wife were shot in Berislav. He also remembered that the Jews from Berislav were very religious people, and that before Germany's arrival, that several Jewish families escaped from Berislav, including his classmates, Polner and Levinstein, and their family. One day, the witness was working in his garden next to the ravine, and suddenly he saw a very long column of Jews that were escorted. There were men, women, and children. Everyone was on foot, and they were guarded by Germans in green uniforms and by local policemen with white armbands. And the witness recognized some of the policemen. He mentioned the name of Danilenko. And I don't know if you remember, but the name of Danilenko was in the Soviet archives, right? So he confirmed also that the local policemen took part in the action, even giving the name of the policeman. So he remembered that the column stopped near the ravine on the road, and that the victims had to line up facing the ravine at the edge of the pit, and that they had to leave their bundles near the ravine, and that they were shot groups by groups. He saw the first groups of victims being shot, and then he had to leave because a man who was requisitioned by local authorities to fill in the pit told him to leave if he would not to be requisitioned himself. So before leaving, he saw that there were like dozens of local people that were waiting near the killing site in order to bury the corpses. So after the interview, Alexander also brought us to the killing sites of the Jews, and it turns out that it was exactly the same place than the previous witnesses showed us. It was the meadow near the slaughter house. So after the testimony with Alexander and the visit of the killing site, we interviewed another person, and now I would like to show you his testimony, and then we will see what we learn from the testimony of Nicola. So this is a testimony of a man called Nicola, who was born in 1926. And thank you to Cynthia for the translation.
Ну, а немцы пришли, этих евреев, они этих береславских было мало, осталось все. Они их собрали, да, беспорядком и порастреливали. А этих уже большие колонны были. Вот, они их выгоняли в рвы, и там приезжала команда, потому что это не те немцы, которые были здесь. Приезжали другие, мы их замечали тоже. Вот, замечали, и их колоннами выгоняли. Там рвы, возле рвов давили детям, маленьких детей. А мы, хлопцы, ходили, и видно было, маленьких детей они под носом чем-то мазали и бросали там. А взрослых раздевали наголо совсем. И стреляли. Пулеметы стояли, и они стреляли, и туда падали. А потом прикидали и уходили. А мы, несколько наш человек, ходили и присыпали, потому что ноги было видно, руки видно было. Мы забрасывали. Вот это, что я видел. Вот такое, понимаете.
А вот когда их стреляли в этот день, евреев сначала где-то собрали перед тем, как их повезти туда к Яру?
Они были собраны.
Они уже там на берегу были собраны?
Не на берегу.
А где?
Они были собраны, где сейчас поликлиника у нас там. Это напротив горсовета там. А там во дворе их собирали раньше. Раньше собирали, там там их кормили немножко такое. Все это большое собирали. А потом вот это уже приехали через некоторое время и...
Несколько дней они там где-то были на территории поликлиники?
Да. Во дворе там жили, помещения, те помещения и сейчас есть.
А вы где эти колонны видели, вот когда они шли к яме, к этой рву? Мы видели их через город, видели, а потом вышли за город. А мы были на кладбище на нашем, и так видно было. А они все пешком были, евреи?
Да, пешком.
Несли с собой, может быть, какие-то вещи, луночки?
Несли там вещи, на руках несли детей, такое все. Да.
А они вот так рядочками шли, там, по 3-4 человека, как строем, или просто толпой?
Да, ну, толпа шла. Не сильно широко, потому что с этой стороны немцы сопровождали и все.
А большая яма, ров этот большой был?
Да, там ровы большие были, большие ровы.
А он был просто натуральный, этот ров, или его выкопали специально?
Не, это
природный.
Природный.
Оно
тянется ров, балка, да, а по бокам рвы эти сходятся, вода. Такое. И вот эти боковые, они сюда стреляли.
А вы вот говорите, что они голые стояли. А где они раздевались? Прямо где-то рядом с ямой?
Там раздевались, а потом вот это подводы были.
Да.
Вот, и на подводы забирали и куда-то увозили, я не знаю.
А их всех сразу поставили понад ямой или группами?
Не, группами.
А по сколько приблизительно человек?
человек по 10 или маленькими группами?
Не, ну так, наверное, человек по 8, по 10, да.
Полностью догола, да, раздевались?
Голые, все. Все голые, все. Вот это и я видел 2 ребеночка, когда немец держал на руках, а и что-то мазал ее, а потом он так взял и бросил.
А этот немец, который ребеночка держал, он был в форме или, может быть, был...
В форме.
Может, в больничном халате?
Нет,
в форме, в обычной,
в форме, да? Все в форме были, все в форме, все, да.
So we learned something new in the testimony that we didn't know before. At first, we learned that there were Jews who were trying to evacuate on the other side of the river to go further to the east, that were waiting for the possibility to cross the bridge, and that there were dozens of people, if not hundreds, and that when the Germans attacked Berislav, they bombed the city, the town, sorry, and there are many people who were on the bench of the river that were killed because the Germans were trying to destroy the building also. And Mikola told us that there are like small mass graves everywhere, also near the river. The other thing that he said to us is that he witnessed a mass execution also, but he didn't witness the mass execution of the local Jewish community, but of the Jews who are trying, who are evacuees, who are refugees, and who are caught by Germans in the surrounding of Berislav. And he said that the people were gathered in the building of the polyclinic. So it's the building on the right pictures that you can see. So the building is still existing until today, and that they were brought to the ravine to be executed. So he said that the victims were undressed. So they were undressed for several reasons. Germans were looking for valuables into their clothing, into their bundles. It's also a question of humiliating, of course, the victims. Also the question of making the escape more difficult. If someone is naked, he will be directly seen as a person who is escaping from killing. He also spoke about poisoned children. So for a long time, historians were very careful about this practice of extermination. Why? Because there is no traces about this practice of extermination in the German archives, in the archives of the perpetrators. But we, during our investigations, we located about 100 killing sites where witnesses who are very close to the killing are saying that Germans are putting some product under the nose of the children. And this is confirmed by the archives of the Soviet commissions and also by the archives of the KGB. So we can state now that it was a common practice that was used, especially by members of the Einsatzgruppe D, because most of the killing sites that were that we investigated and we found information about poisoning children were in the area of the operation of the Einsatzgruppe D. So Mikola brought us to the killing site, and so the killing site is a different location from the former one. It's the big ravine that you can see on the left. And as you can see, also there is no memorial here. So these are the buildings that were the synagogues before the war. They are still standing today, and today there are buildings of the local administration. There is the town hall and another building of the that belongs to today to the town, and it's also in these places that during the German occupation there were camps for Soviet prisoners of war. So, and the last person that we interviewed was Lydia. She was born in 29, so she was 12 years old in 42. She also remembered the names of many of the Jews from Berislav. She also remembered the Levinstein family because she had like she had like classmates from this family at school. She used to work no, sorry. So she was not a witness of the mass killing, but she remembered that the Jews were gathered in the square before the killing. That they were that they were brought in columns to the killing site. She remembers that they had belongings with them, and she confirmed more or less the locations of the killing site of local Jews. And what was also interesting for us, that she was the only person who knew where was the killing site of the Soviet prisoners of war, because her father was a Soviet soldier, and he was caught by German soldiers at the beginning of the war, and he was in the camps, in the synagogues, and then he was executed among other Soviet prisoners of war, mostly officers. So just to show you here the different steps of the genocide, what did we learn during the investigation? We learned that we could locate the different synagogues that were used as camps for prisoners of war. We located the place where the Jews were gathered in the building of the polyclinic before the executions, and we located the different killing sites of the victims, the killing sites of the Soviet prisoners of war, the Roma, and also the two killing sites of the Jewish population. And also we could find the last traces of the Jewish cemetery of Berislav. I wanted to show you this, the first sketch I showed you on at the beginning of the presentation, and show you a Google map of today and the killing site. So the sketch was very precise because we could finally cross-reference what we found with what was written in the archives. And as you can see, so we have the stadium that is still a stadium today. We have the killing sites of the Jews, which is this one, which is indicated here, and is the exact location that we found thanks to the witnesses, which is like there are the ruins of the slaughterhouse that are still existing here. There is the killing sites of the prisoners of war and of the Romas that is here. And the point here was not identified by the Soviet commissions, but it was showed us by Mikola, the witness, is the killing site of the 200 evacuees, Jewish refugees that were caught by Germans and that were killed in Berislav. So basically, we could confirm the location of the killing sites mentioned in the Soviet Commission, and also identify another killing site and another mass grave that is not commemorated until today. So, as the last slide about the investigation, I wanted to explain you, to show you what we finally learned and what we could confirm from the archives. In the different testimony, what is important, we could gather the identities of many Jews from Berislav, thanks to the testimonies of the witnesses, because there are very few information about the Jewish community of Berislav before the war, as it was a small community. We didn't have the names of the victim in the Soviet commissions, so we didn't know too much about the Jews of Berislav before the war. We could confirm the main execution of the local Jewish population, also thanks to the information that were given by witnesses related to the perpetrators, to the local policemen that were present during the killing and that were recognized by some of the witnesses. What was new, it was the information about the execution of the Jewish refugees, around 200 according to the witness, that were not mentioned in the archives, and all the witnesses also say that there were various executions, smallest killings of 1-2 persons that were perpetrated during the German occupation. We also could find one information, found information thanks to witnesses about the killing of one concrete family, and also about the killing of the hairdresser. What we didn't find is that we didn't find any information about the killing of 17 Jews that were killed in October 41. Any witnesses was talking about that. We could locate the location of the camps for prisoners of war and the location of the killing sites. People heard about the executions of Roma people in Berislav, but no one was an eyewitnesses of their killing, and all the killing site remains uncommemorated until today. So just 2 last slides if you would like to know more about Berislav, if you would like to have access to the testimonies I showed you, and I have to be a little bit corporate, so I will do the advertisement for our interactive map. So this is a map of all the places, of all the killings we investigated in Eastern Europe. You can find it on yahadmap.org, and there is a page about each places we investigate. There is one about Berislav with excerpts of archives, excerpts of testimonies, pictures of nowadays, archival pictures. So you have materials here that you can use in your classrooms if you would like to speak about this part of the history. And I would like also to recommend you the Untold Stories project from Yad Vashem, where there is a web page that is dedicated to the Jewish community of Berislav, and also on the YouTube channel of Yad Vashem. If you type Berislav, you will have a testimony of a Jewish survivor from Berislav. So many thanks for your attention. I hope it was interesting for you. If you have any questions, I would be very pleased to answer.
Mijao, muchísimas gracias por tu conferencia, por tu disertación. La verdad que es muy interesante y volverte a escuchar y escuchar esta perspectiva y la experiencia que ustedes tienen estando en el lugar es muy, muy interesante. Cintia, muchísimas gracias por la traducción simultánea. Ahora estamos abriendo el chat para que ustedes puedan hacer las preguntas a Mijao. Quiero aprovechar para saludar al doctor Yossi Goldstein, que nos está acompañando, que todos ustedes lo conocen y que justamente el mes pasado estuvo dando una lección para el grupo de Morey Morim Así que yo sí, gracias por estar también acá. Como ustedes saben, en este espacio, como mencionó Michał, es en relación a la temática anual de este año, que es el último judío, 80 años desde el inicio de la aniquilación masiva, la operación Barbarroja en junio de 1941, y por eso este tema, y también Orit, en la segunda sesión, que después Vale ya nos va a contar, estaba a trabajar este tema. Michał, mientras vamos esperando las preguntas del público, a mí personalmente me interesa saber qué es lo que vos como persona sentís al ser parte de un proyecto así, el encontrarte con la gente, el poder hablar, porque a nivel de información es impresionante lo que nos comentás, pero a vos como persona, ¿qué sentís? ¿Sentís que es algo, qué función cumplís vos o cómo te sentís vos como ser humano al hacer este tipo de trabajo, que es bastante difícil también a nivel emocional?
Thank you, Eliana, for your question. Of course, it's an important question. People are often asking us to the whole team that is taking part in this investigation about our feelings, about our motivation. I will give you two answers. The first is that we are trained not to have any feelings during the interviews and not to judge the people that we are talking with, because it's not our job. And if we start to judge the people and ask like the questions that of course we want to ask, but we cannot, about the question of collaboration, of being guilty or not, we cannot ask these questions, because if not, there will be no interview. We are trained to ask very factual questions. I don't know if you saw during the short excerpt of interview that I showed to you. The questions are always very technical, about fact, about numbers, about places, because it's also a way to ask questions without having any judgment, right? And it helps people to remember and to share the story of what they witnessed. The second part of the answer will be, of course, we are more than aware that this is the very last moment to gather the testimonies of those who are witnesses both of what was the Jewish life, who were the Jews, of what was the Jewish community before the war, and also who are the witnesses of the genocide of their neighbors. So we take it as a responsibility to be able to find these people, because finally these people are the keepers of the memories of these Jewish communities, and also they are the last persons who probably knows in a lot of cases where the mass graves, where the bodies of the victims are still buried. We take it as a necessity, as a responsibility to do this job, but of course there is like an emotional side in the work. We have different means. Some people are working with psychologists. We are a very kind of close team, and during the trips we talk a lot about what we hear, and I think this is the biggest therapy we have, is to talk between each other.
Gracias, Michał. Es muy compleja la respuesta y es muy difícil, como entiendo que contás, estar en este lugar y tener estas dos estas dos visiones o posturas al hacer las preguntas. Y tiene que ver esto con una de las preguntas que pregunta Jordi Barra: ¿cuál es el futuro de este proyecto? ¿Hacia dónde se encamina ante la desaparición de los testigos, que es lo que vos estabas comentando?
So it's a very good question. As we are in the, maybe we will continue to gather testimonies for the next 2 or 3 years, because we feel every year, every trip, that there is less witnesses. For instance, investigation today, where you have 5 or 6 witnesses, are like in Berislav, are rare. Usually we have like 3, 4, 2 people. Sometimes there is no more witnesses sometimes we just go to a village or a town and there is no witnesses, so we are looking for them, but there is no one else. So we are still in a rush and in a hurry to be able to do a maximum of interviews in the next 2 or 3 years, and to try to identify the sites related to the Jewish life and also to the genocide. And there are several natural, I would say, continuation of the project. For the moment, we are very focused on doing the interviews and identifying the killing sites, but the natural continuation of it would be to give a proper burial place to the victims, and especially establish protection and memorial on the mass graves that we identify, especially in those places that are hardly accessible, that are located in very rural areas, in like poor regions, where there is no initiatives to commemorate the Jewish community and the Jewish victims. The other things is, of course, now we have this almost 8,000 today. We just finished like 2 trips in the last weeks. I was in Poland last week for research, and so we have almost 8,000 testimonies right now. It's like now we have really to start to share these testimonies at different level, at the level of academic exchanges, but also at the level of education. We are just starting to have educational initiatives like that, like today, since 2 or 3 years, and we are developing more and more this side of the project. And I would say, unfortunately, thanks to the work that we are doing, we kind of, how could I say that? We kind of learn a methodology of how to investigate about mass murder. And since several years, we were asked by different countries, by different institutions, to investigate about more modern, more contemporary mass violence and genocide. So, for instance, we are currently having one of our main projects that is in Iraq and Syria, and we are investigating about the crimes committed by ISIS against the Yazidi minority that used to live especially around the Sinjar Mountains, and in 2014 were persecuted by ISIS when ISIS expanded its territory in Iraq and Syria. So we are interviewing like those who escape or who are bought by their family from ISIS. And as it's an ongoing genocide, and I use the word genocide on purpose because we are working with specialists of international law and many international institutions who are stating that we are talking about a genocide, and as it's an ongoing genocide, we are we add a humanitarian side to our work. We opened like centers in different IDP camps especially for Yazidi women who were used as sex slaves by ISIS during several years, and especially for children also, especially young boys who were kidnapped by ISIS and who were put in Quranic schools of ISIS and who were trained to become terrorists and kamikazes. So the challenge for these children is to reintegrate them in the society because they are really young. They forgot about their native language. They speak Kurdish in their family, but they were 5, 6, 8, 10 years old when they were brought by ISIS, so they completely forgot about their own identity. So we are having a workshop with them when they can learn like art, sports, languages, to be able to resocialize them in the IDP camps and to make them remember about their Yazidi past. And it's also necessary because we don't really know what is the psychological state of these children because they were ready to kill people. So we need to develop this kind of initiatives because we don't know if in fact these children are not dangerous for the society or not. So it was a very long answer, I hope.
Okay, no, muy interesante la respuesta, y sabemos que también trabajan con otros genocidios. Dos preguntas cortas para terminar que están haciendo aquí. Una es de Andrea Trumper. ¿De qué forma identifican y corroboran que ese sitio haya sido un lugar de ejecución? Vimos que hay documentación de los archivos y vimos que hablan con los testimonios. ¿Hay algo más que ayude? ¿Y quién viaja con ustedes? Esas 11 personas que mencionaste, ¿quiénes son? ¿Qué tienen? Y la última...
So I will start.
Sí, perdón.
Yes, please go ahead if you want to
No,
ask.
y la última, para terminar, la última pregunta es si las autoridades de Berislav sabían de estos lugares, las autoridades del lugar, cómo hicieron ustedes para encontrar estos testimonios, y si ellos, los de la gente de Berislav, sabían. Y listo.
Thank you for both questions. They are very interesting. So I will start with the first one. So the teams are consisting of 11 people. There is a team leader that is doing the interviews. There are 2 interpreters who are translating from Ukrainian into French or English. There is a photographer who is taking the pictures that you saw. There is a cameraman because all the interviews are recorded and available for consultation at our research center, but also upon request online. So if you would be interested, please do not hesitate to contact me if you would like to have information about some of our access, about some of the places or some of the testimonies that we recorded. And there are teams of investigators who are going with the camera team, let's say, to the villages in order to find the witnesses to do the interviews and to identify the killing site. About the question of how could we confirm the location of a killing site. So we work, as you mentioned, Eliana, with the archives. At first, we cross-reference them with the different testimonies of the witnesses. In some of the places, we didn't do it in Berislav. It depends also of the possibility of the cooperation with local administration or not. We also work with the ballistic expert who is joining the team and who is looking for the cartridges after the killings. And the cartridges are usually, they are not like deep in the ground, but you can very easily even see them basically on the around the mass graves. And this is also an important information because it's another evidence of the crime. And on each cartridge there is a place of fabrication, of production, and also a year of production. So it could also give you information about the perpetrators, right? And when we do this ballistic expertise, very often we also find, because the ballistic expert is working with the metallic detector, and he can also find like valuables, jewelry that are belonging to the victims. It's also another proof of the genocide. Why? Because we got some critics, some questions at the beginning of our project. Was like, but how do you know that the victims were Jewish and that they are not like the victims of the Great Famine, for instance, as there are millions of people in Ukraine and Russia that died from the Great Famine. So finding the cartridges and the artifacts after the victims are also kind of physical proof of the massacres. But we don't do exhumation, of course. We are completely aware. We work with rabbinical authorities, and we don't do that. We don't dig also the places to find the cartridges of the belongings. We just take the things that are on the surface. This, I would say, might be a next step of our work, to work with new technologies like geo radars and stuff, once we will be starting the process of memorializing the places. Did I answer to?
Sí, contestaste las dos preguntas, y la última era si las autoridades de Berislav sabían de estos lugares que ustedes están contando, lo que estaba en el mapa.
I think they know. I mean, I didn't talk directly to the authorities, but it's our investigators who did. I think they were even helpful for giving us some local contacts that may introduce us as witnesses, but I'm not sure they plan to do any kind of commemoration, or if this is in among their priorities. So usually when you have a commemoration, it's rarely on the initiative of the administration. It's more on the initiative of relatives from families who are killed somewhere, or institutions who are dealing with the memory of the victims. They didn't do any issues to us.
Ah, ok. Eso es importante. Creo que también querían preguntar eso, si habían tenido algún problema. Mijail, te quiero agradecer en nombre de BAMA, de la Agencia Judía y de Yad Vashem, por haber estado y por habernos brindado y compartido con nosotros todo lo que están haciendo. Quiero pasar la palabra a Vale Levin para dar los últimos anuncios y Jimena finalizar.
Tal como dijo Eliana, desde la Fundación BAMA le agradecemos a Mijail Hoyak, director del Centro de Investigación sobre el Holocausto Yahad in Unum, nuevamente al equipo profesional de Yad Vashem, Eliana Rabbadihi y Yehiel Chilevsky, por los conocimientos brindados en todos sus espacios de formación, a la Claims Conference por la confianza depositada en nuestros espacios de formación. Las esperamos el 23 de agosto, en este mismo horario, para un nuevo encuentro donde contaremos con una charla titulada "No hay nada más trágico que el destino de mi pueblo, el holocausto de los judíos soviéticos y los territorios anexados", a cargo de Orit Margaliot, directora del Departamento de Guías de la Escuela Internacional para el Estudio del Holocausto de Yad Vashem. Les contamos que los egresados de nuestro programa Morei Morim contarán con las siguientes capacitaciones sobre materiales educativos de Yad Vashem. El martes 12 de octubre a las 16:30 horas, a cargo de Eliana Badiji, un calendario de vida, la historia de Zvi Hershel. El martes 19 de octubre a las 16:30 horas de Argentina, Eliana Badiji, la historia a través de una película animada, la historia de Simcha Holzberg. El 26 de octubre, a cargo de Yehiel Chilevsky, un calendario de vida, la historia de Zvi Hershel. El 2 de noviembre, también a cargo de Yehiel, la historia a través de una película animada, la historia de Simcha Holzberg. Les agradecemos a todas haber participado de este encuentro y les compartiremos a continuación una breve encuesta para que puedan brindar su feedback del encuentro del día de hoy. Es muy importante para nosotros contar con su opinión para saber cómo fue la experiencia del encuentro, así que les solicitamos que completen la encuesta y ahora sí le paso la palabra a la directora de nuestra fundación, Jimena Jakubovich.
Simplemente agradecerles en primer lugar a Mijael Yolak por esta valiosísima conferencia, un aporte muy valioso. Por supuesto el partnership del trabajo conjunto permanente con Yad Vashem, el apoyo a la agencia judía y el apoyo para hacer este tipo de actividades y nuestros programas de la Cleanse Conference, por supuesto. Los esperamos el lunes 23, no el que viene, sino el próximo, en el mismo horario que hoy, con Orit, que también brindará una conferencia muy, muy valiosa para todos nosotros. Así que hasta la próxima y nos estamos viendo.